Hello, my name is Joel Pettis, and I am the Interim Executive Director here at the Immigration Resource Center of San Gabriel Valley. I'd like to welcome you to our live stream, The Immigration Conversation, a voter's guide to immigration platform and policies. I'd actually like to first ask you if you wouldn't mind typing into our comment section what city and state you're tuning in from, just so we can see who's online with us and who's here to listen. The Immigration Resource Center of San Gabriel Valley was started 6 years ago to support the immigrant population in San Gabriel Valley by providing quality, low-cost immigration legal services and referral services that consider the needs of the whole person. These services offer an affordable way for local, foreign-born, non-U.S. citizens to comply with immigration law and contribute to the ability of individuals to provide for themselves and their families. Another thing I'd like to mention before we get started is we will not be providing any legal advice as part of our program today. If you would like to schedule a time to talk with our legal team, you can find more information about that by visiting our website, ircsgv.org. Once again, if you want to put in the chat box where you're tuning in from, what city and state, just so we can see who's tuning in, that would be great. Also would like to mention that if you can vote, we would like to encourage you to do so. You can start voting. Early voting starts October 5th, and voting centers will be open beginning October 24th, so watch for that. And the last day to register to vote in California is October 19th, so please keep that in mind. If you haven't registered, there's still time to register to vote. We would also like to invite you to attend our 6th annual gala, which is being held virtually on October 24th from 6 to 8 p.m. That will be, again, taking place virtually, and there'll be information in the chat box for you to take a look at. And so I'd like to begin today by asking Jonathan, our Director of Legal Services, to introduce himself and talk a little bit more about what the IRC does.
Okay, thanks, Joel. My name is Jonathan Fung. I'm the Director of Legal Services for the Immigration Resource Center. What type of services we provide? We are mainly doing naturalization right now, which is helping people become citizens after they've already become legal permanent residents. We are also doing DACA renewals for people who have received DACA in the past. No new initial applications are being received right now by the government. And finally, a bulk of our work is done with helping people receive general consultations to receive their legal permanent residency if they are right now without any legal status or undocumented. What that usually means is we will help people with family-based benefits. So if somebody is in a mixed status family, part U.S. citizen or legal permanent resident, part undocumented, they might have some options to become a permanent resident themselves. We also help with survivor-based benefits. So people who have been survivors of serious crimes such as domestic violence and other types of serious crimes that result in injury or harm. We work with the police to resolve these situations and to provide benefits for the survivors. And other types of humanitarian applications that are available for immigrants, such as for refugees and asylees who are hoping to adjust their status.
I mentioned how people can contact us. Any additional information on contacting us? And also, are we currently seeing clients?
Yes, so due to COVID-19, we are not physically open, but we are still performing remote services. And anybody who emails us at info@ircsgv.org or calls us at our phone number at 626-509-9472 and leaves a message, we'll be able to receive an appointment. So we're still working as hard as we can to provide services, but right now everything is performed remotely.
Okay, great. So let's talk about federal policy or federal legislation. Jonathan, if you could share with us and those folks who are tuning in. By the way, I did forget to mention we are recording this live stream, and It will be made available later today or this evening, and you will be able to go to our website at ircsgv.org and find the link to the video recording. So if you can share with our audience what the current policy and the impact it's having on the work that you and your team do with our clients.
Yeah, thanks, Joel. Well, it's hard to summarize almost everything that's happened within the last 4 years. There have been a lot of changes. So one thing to recognize is that immigration law has actually not substantially changed. The underlying law has not really seen a lot of new legislative developments, and there hasn't really been anything major passed in the last 4 years. But every practitioner who has been working during this administration will tell you that they have had to almost unlearn everything and relearn everything they knew about immigration since maybe the last 20 years, because the interpretation of these laws have changed so drastically. And of course, everyone has seen sweeping changes that appear on the news, but there have been small technical details that have changed that go under the radar and have still impacted almost every area of the services we provide. So one good way to summarize this would be a quote from Ira Kurzban, who has written the basic source book that every practitioner will have on their bookshelf. And he says that all these changes have been accomplished through bureaucratic means, mainly by presidential proclamations, executive orders, by changing policy manuals, by changing websites, forms, procedures, and regulations. So really what I want to emphasize is this administration has really showcased how much you can accomplish within immigration just by using the power and discretion of the executive branch. So one of the ways that our clients have been directly impacted is by how Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, ICE, has treated their interior enforcement policies. So in the past, there was a framework of what they called enforcement priorities, prioritizing mainly at the top national security threats, people with criminal records who were violent offenders or had committed other serious felonies. And then lower on the list, people who have already received removal orders, maybe people with misdemeanors. And at the bottom, people who have none of the above issues, no criminal record and no history of immigration, court or interactions with enforcement. And those categories have all been eliminated. And the policy of ICE as it stands right now is that everyone is available for enforcement. Everyone is considered something of an enforcement priority. The former director of ICE, Thomas Homan, had summarized how people should feel if they're undocumented in the country is that they should be afraid and looking over their shoulder. So what this has practically turned out to look like in our communities is that there are substantially more community arrests, what we call ICE not just going to local jails for detaining people who have been arrested or who are currently in the detention of local law enforcement. They have scaled those up by 4 times, going into the community and doing things such as launching worksite investigations and doing dragnets across neighborhoods where they would be looking for some particular individuals, but also engage in what they call collateral arrests, arresting anybody else they come across that they believe they have probable cause to believe that they are not in the country with any legal status. So they have stated that this is a explicit reaction to sanctuary city policies, that they hope to increase arrests of people who do not have criminal records because they are unable to access the resources of local law enforcement. And what that has turned our work into is a greater emphasis on know your rights presentations. At the beginning of this administration, the IRC emphasized that we should have everyone in our community know how to interact with ICE should they encounter them, what this means for their daily lives, and what places should they consider to be more careful, what places are considered relatively safe. One thing that we've also seen heavily impact our survivor-based services is how they've treated what they call the U visa, a visa that's available for victims of serious crimes. ICE has decided to remove their policy of deferring action on cases for people who apply for the U visa. What that means is now they say you can still be deported even if you have identified yourself as a victim of crime and you are applying for benefits as a survivor. And they will enforce pending removal orders even if you are an applicant. And their logic is you can just wait outside the country and receive news about your application, even if it might take an average of 5 years right now to process one of those cases. So what we are seeing is a chilling effect on a lot of our clients, the potential for them to be re-traumatized as survivors of crimes. And we know that every person that we have to advise on these additional risks will be less likely to exercise their rights. We've seen fee waivers been rejected so that the process for applying for these survivor benefits has increased in expense. And we've seen even the rejection of applications for minor details. Many practitioners were surprised when USCIS started practicing a policy of rejecting applications that had even one form blank, one field blank, such as if you are missing a middle name. And so in an application that might be 100 pages long, even something as simple as leaving one field blank would get your whole application rejected. And this is something they only apply to asylum applications and other survivor-based applications right now, such as the U visa applications for Violence Against Women Act benefits, and we don't see this for other types of cases. And of course, everyone knows about the impact to the DACA program. The stated goal of the Trump administration is to terminate DACA. They have been trying to do so since September 5, 2017, when the program was originally terminated before it was partially reinstated due to an injunction. An ongoing litigation kept the program alive until the Supreme Court finally ruled this year that the Trump administration had violated the Administrative Procedures Act and will have to reinstate the program in full. We have not seen that happen. Right now, they are actually preventing new applicants into the program in what practitioners see as a defiance of the Supreme Court order, ostensibly to buy enough time to terminate the program in accordance with the Administrative Procedures Act. So we expect the program to be fully terminated if President Trump is elected for a second term. We have also seen impact to our clients with the so-called travel ban. In 2015, the then candidate President Trump had explicitly stated that we need a total and complete shutdown of Muslim immigration into the United States. And that was a campaign promise that was on his website until the middle of 2017. This was unconstitutional on its face, so it took on a new form in 2017 as a quote-unquote 90-day travel ban, which had been indefinitely extended to this day and has no current end date. That travel ban has extended to 13 different countries. How that has affected people is you are not allowed to immigrate, period, from these 13 countries. They have different restrictions, but for the most part, you're not allowed to immigrate. And you can apply for a waiver, but only 2% of people who ever apply are able to receive one. And most people don't apply in the first place. So that has impacted families that have come into the IRC. We've practically seen in a clinic that we ran for a local Nigerian church, a family who had applied for every family member procedurally in the correct way, had waited for about 10 years, and had seen half the family come over already, the other half of the family be denied and have to wait due to national security reasons. So we have definitely seen this impact our clients by being sort of an arbitrary dividing line between who is allowed to come in and who is not. And finally, we've seen what they call the public charge interpretation impact most of our applications. So in the past, if you had applied through a family member to immigrate to the United States, you would have to show that you have the financial means to be sponsored and to remain somebody who is not a ward of the state. And as long as there was sufficient income in your support network, they would check that out and that would be fine. These days, they have extended that analysis to include, do we think you as an immigrant will ever in the future become a public charge, ever use public benefits? And that has been such an uncertain and non-standard sort of set of guidelines. Every case is treated differently, that no case has been adjudicated, denied or accepted under those new guidelines. And we expect that to impact almost everybody who applies for family benefits. And what I've practically seen that happen to is families who have disabled relatives, both on the US citizen side and both on the immigrant side, who I've had to advise that they would have a very, very difficult time applying because of their financial situations. Even if the US citizen applicant would be greatly helped by having a family member immigrate to the US. And we've also seen very specific responses to COVID-19 from the administration that have largely gone under the radar. Normal visa processing has been suspended. So most tourist visas, most work permit visas, and the stated reason for blocking most work visas, employment-based visas, is that so Americans can receive these jobs first during the economic recovery. And we have also seen the suspension of most immigrant visas. They are only allowing spouses and minor children of US citizens and other family members, such as parents of US citizens, siblings, adult children, any relatives of permanent residents. They are being blocked now under ostensibly safety guidelines due to COVID-19. So we've also seen the entirety of the asylum program, entries from Canada and Mexico, shut down, again, ostensibly for the protection of the country. And everybody who has passed through another country that has COVID cases is not allowed to enter the US, and asylum seekers are not even given a screening to see if they have a credible fear of prosecution and are being returned into dangerous situations. So we've seen lots of policies across the board, Joel, and these are only the tip of the iceberg for what has affected our clients.
Wow, that's a lot. Thank you so much for sharing, Jonathan. And as we think about the election, so again, I want to stress the importance of voting, right? If you can vote, please go out and vote. And an angry tweet is not a vote. So I want to make sure that you all know that. If you can vote, please vote. Jonathan, staying on the federal legislation, as you read through the Biden-Harris campaign platform, and particularly around immigration, what do you anticipate the impact would be of a Biden-Harris administration on immigration?
Mm-hmm. So in the same way that the executive branch is able to accomplish many of its goals without any help from Congress under the Trump administration. The Biden administration would largely be able to do the same. And they have stated that they do want to reverse most of the policies that I outlined, including the public charge rule, the travel ban, restoring the enforcement priorities that had been in place beforehand. In addition to those things, they have talked about going further to work on addressing the root causes of what they call irregular migration from Central America. So they claim that economic insecurity, public safety, and corruption are the main reasons that people have been trying to migrate out of these countries into the US, and they hope to address that by foreign policy and aid packages. We have seen them also stress the need for more public-private partnerships, basically pushing more resources towards humanitarian aid for the border and directing government funds towards shelters and legal aid providers. And we have also seen them express a desire to go further than, of course, just reversing the immigration policies currently implemented under Biden's administration with Obama. They had envisioned a extension on DACA, really taking those benefits further than just people who have arrived as children and extending it to parents of US citizens. We expect the program to not only be reinstated, but for Biden and Harris to focus on legalization pathways, not only for DACA recipients, but a permanent pathway to a green card for people who are on temporary protected status, TPS. Some people with that status have been in the country for more than 20 years, such as from El Salvador, and they have not had a pathway towards remaining in the country permanently. And they are in danger now of losing those protections because almost every country on the TPS list has been targeted for removal by the current administration.
I also want to stress, I know, fees are obviously a barrier to many of our clients, right? And so a way, just so you all know who are viewing, we do charge on a sliding scale, right? Am I right in that?
Yeah, so one of the difficulties that, of course, many of our vulnerable clients face is they are unable to pay the immigration filing fees and unable to pay what attorneys normally charge for legal services. Thankfully, because of our partnership with the state of California, the California Department of Social Services, we are able to provide most of our clients completely free services for the categories that I mentioned earlier: applying for naturalization, renewing DACA, and receiving consultations and application assistance for becoming permanent residents. We are worried that the policies that are being passed are gradually increasing fees. We are seeing a big fee increase occur on October 2nd to mainly fund the budget shortfalls that immigration has been seeing in this last year, and due to their new policies of expending more and more time and resources on basically fraud prevention and immigration benefit denials. So we are hoping to see a more efficient USCIS lower their fees again, and hopefully be one less barrier for our clients.
And the reason I bring that up is one of the reasons we do the gala is to raise money, of course, for the work that we do, and also to offset more of the costs that some of our clients might be facing, and or potentially help support them, whether it's mental health or what have you. So I would encourage all of you who are watching or will be watching this recorded to please consider attending our virtual gala that's coming up. I did forget to mention that if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to pop them into the chat. We do have some folks moderating that will let me know as questions come in. I also want to remind you that we're not providing legal advice, so if you have a legal question, again, we won't be doing that on air. I'm going to go ahead and invite my colleague Rosa up, who will introduce herself and also move into the next phase of talking about state legislation and the impact that's having on our clients and the work that we do.
Gracias, Joel. Hola, everyone. Hello, my name is Rosa, and I am the Intake and Office Coordinator of the Immigration Resource Center. In a pre-COVID world, I was the first person that you would see at the office. Unfortunately, we cannot be together in person, and so I am the first voice that you will probably be hearing over the phone. If you have any questions on how to make an appointment or just any questions in general, feel free to call us at 626-509-9472 and leave a voicemail, and I am more than happy. Either myself or one of our volunteers will be getting back to you as soon as possible. And if you feel a little shy talking on the phone, that's okay. Feel free to leave us an email at info@ircsgv.org. One more time, it's info@ircsgv.org. So, Jonathan, we have some more questions. Can you please tell us about immigration and state legislation? Is there anything that we have to pay attention to?
Well, in terms of the big picture, federal law matters much more heavily because immigration law is almost exclusively within the purview of federal law. But state legislation does matter in that it impacts a lot of law enforcement behavior towards local immigrants and what access to resources they might have, as well as the state's role in collaborating with the federal enforcement machine in deportations and other enforcement mechanisms. So there are no state measures on the ballot right now, but I think it is still important to talk in general about some of the policies that have impacted immigrants in California and how those have really changed their experience of interacting with government compared to some other states, and how we can support those measures. So in 2017, October 5th, 2017, California passed SB 54 and became colloquially what we know as a sanctuary state. And a lot of people don't understand what that term might mean. The main goal of passing sanctuary legislation is to decouple the government and mainly law enforcement from their role as performing public safety services and immigration enforcement, mainly to build trust with the immigrant community so that they can approach law enforcement, serve as witnesses, report crimes without fear that they will also be punished for their immigration status. So in short, what SB 54 does is they limit the circumstances in which state and local law enforcement can interact with ICE, and they prohibit the use of state and local resources in furthering immigration enforcement agendas. And what we've seen that look like is there were two very important acts that passed that govern all law enforcement interaction with ICE, and those were the Truth Act, passed in 2017, and the Trust Act, passed in 2014. The Truth Act mainly prevented ICE from interacting with people in custody of local law enforcement without them first knowing some of the rights, including the right to remain silent, without having professional interpreters, and being able to decline being interviewed. The Trust Act had prevented or limited the circumstances in which immigrants in custody of local law enforcement are allowed to be held or transferred over to ICE. And because of SB 54, there are no what we call detention holds allowed. So if somebody is detained or somebody is in the custody of law enforcement and is supposed to be released, for example, they have finished a prison sentence or they have paid bail and are about to be released, they can sometimes be requested to be held for additional 48 hours by ICE. This is in a gray area of constitutionality, and certainly some jurisdictions have found it illegal. And now in California, those holds are no longer being accepted. They do create liability for law enforcement, especially when they mistakenly hold somebody who turns out to be a U.S. citizen or otherwise have legal status in the U.S. That is definitely a violation of the Constitution. They also have passed specific immigrant rights bills for what they call victims of crime. So there's a act called the Immigrant Victims of Crime Equity Act, which has standardized the way that U visa applicants, so again, survivors of serious crimes, can apply to law enforcement for certification, showing that they were helpful and that they helped further the investigation into the crime that happened. In the past, every municipality, every county had treated these requests differently. Sometimes the personal politics of the sheriff or the police chief could get involved and prevent somebody from getting a certification or receiving benefits. And what this had done is require all law enforcement agencies to act in the same way, respond to these requests in the same way, and set up standardized guidelines so that everybody who is a survivor can expect to be treated by law enforcement in the same way.
That's great, thank you. So what I'm hearing you say is mostly that victims of violent crimes will be treated fairly. They will all be treated the same when they report to the police, and they will not be detained because of their immigration status.
Right.
Correct?
So practically speaking, what these bills have done is they've prohibited law enforcement from investigating somebody's immigration status, from asking about it, from collecting data about it. So that again had been a county by county enterprise before, and you could expect to be treated differently as an undocumented immigrant depending on your local jurisdiction. But these policies have interacted to, I guess, foster a sense of trust with law enforcement and an expectation that as a victim, as somebody who is a witness, you should not expect immigration enforcement to come with your cooperation with law enforcement.
And so in this new ballot in November, we will not have any specific ballot measures that deal with immigration, correct?
Right. Correct.
Okay. And then there are no new state candidates that we're also voting for. There's none of that in this coming election either. So that is it for the state. Okay. Now we have more specific questions regarding LA County and immigration. What does that mean? So we'll have again Joel Perez, our interim executive director, who will be asking more questions. Thank you all.
Thank you, Rosa. And Jonathan, I know you're doing a lot of talking, and I appreciate your stamina and you're probably feeling dry mouth, right? But as we move to LA County, I'm curious, as you are working with clients, anything that you are experiencing of the impact what LA County is doing either in support of our immigrant community or potentially some of the challenges that they're experiencing because of local law enforcement or those types of issues.
Yeah, so I think actually I do think that brings up a good point about both the interactions of state and local resources available. One thing I did not mention earlier is that even though there are no direct legislative efforts that you can vote on regarding immigration right now, you do want to see how your local state legislator is supporting initiatives to both fund the Immigration Services Fund, which is my previously mentioned partnership with the state. CDSS is able to give grants out to local agencies like ours to provide services. That is one way that people can get access to resources. And the other is direct relief, such as Governor Newsom's disaster relief assistance for immigrants program. Those were very crucial during COVID because, as you may or may not know, if you're an undocumented immigrant, you do not qualify for any federal benefits. So even though there is a widespread, I guess, misunderstanding that undocumented immigrants will use things like Medi-Cal or food stamps or cash assistance, welfare, they do not qualify for any of those things. They do not even qualify for unemployment benefits. So they have largely not have had access to anything during COVID-19. In terms of the county, we have seen, we are able to partner with the LA County Department of Workforce Development. They tried something brand new with us. I think they also saw the same need within the undocumented community, not being able to receive any assistance through traditional unemployment means, and they were able to partner with us to grant some emergency assistance for people who had lost their jobs due to COVID-19 and were not getting assistance elsewhere. I think that answers your question, right, Joe?
Yeah. Anything else on the county level you feel like you want to elaborate on or bring up to our audience?
So what county initiatives can do is further increase the protections that were given at the state level. Again, the most impactful legislation is going to happen at the federal level, but at a local level, on the county level, we can change how an undocumented immigrant will experience both access to resources and their encounters with local law enforcement. The good thing about LA County is that they have increased the protections available to immigrants who are in custody of law enforcement. Now they are not allowed to be transferred to ICE directly unless there is a judicial warrant. Judicial warrant would require somebody to be handed over to ICE, but barring that, they do need the cooperation of the county. The county has also identified what they call certain sensitive locations. Under ICE policy, they tend to avoid churches, schools, hospitals, places that they call sensitive locations, not because they are barred by statute from entering them, but because of the negative reception and optics of doing such things. So as a matter of policy, they've left those places alone. The county is unable to control where ICE goes, but again, ICE is not allowed to enter these places without the consent of the local government. So county property is now considered to be sensitive on their terms, and they will not allow ICE to enter without a judicial search warrant as well.
Okay, great, good. So the thing I need to mention is we do have a LA County Board of Supervisors race in the 2nd District between State Senator Holly Mitchell and Herb Wesson. Senator Mitchell provided us with a little bit of her perspective, particularly around immigration, but she is a native, LA native, progressive leader who represents nearly 1 million LA residents in the 30th Senate District. And at the she wanted us to know and communicate that on the onset of COVID-19, she stepped up as a budget chair and fought to ensure over $1 billion in emergency funding for families and small businesses, as well as advocating for immigrant rights. She stood up against Trump's hurtful public charge, which you've talked about, and she's endorsed by immigrant rights groups and activists for working to remove systemic barriers so that all Californians can thrive, and for passing legislation that protects immigrant communities. We did ask Herb Wesson to provide us with information and his positions, particularly around immigration, but we did not receive a response. So I just want to make sure that we did invite both candidates, and Senator Holly Mitchell did respond to our request. Anything else at the county level, Jonathan, you want to mention, or anything you felt like you missed that you wanted to hit before we end our time, or open it up for a little bit of Q&A if people have? If you have questions, again, I suggest that you drop them into the chat box and we may be able to get to them. We will have some time to answer any questions that people may have.
Well, not really, Joel. I just want to reemphasize that even though, again, everybody is probably experiencing disruption in their personal lives and in their work, we are still open. We do encourage people to actually talk to us if they are planning to naturalize in the near future, because again, there will be large fee increases across the board for most immigration applications on October 2nd. And one thing that I guess this is tied in with federal policy, on October 2nd, most fee waiver options will be eliminated for most applications. So if you are simply unable to afford applying for benefits such as naturalization, regardless of how eligible you are, otherwise, you will not be able to waive those fees. You will just have to find a way to pay these application fees. So we are seeing an informal wall being built around our legal immigration system, both through the bureaucratic hurdles I mentioned, but also through the financial hurdles that they are erecting.
Great. Again, I know I've said this a few times, but if you can vote, we encourage you to vote. Take the opportunity to exercise your right to vote. It's an important right that we have, those of us who have legal status in this country, and know that we're working hard to help our clients obtain legal status if possible. And again, just to reiterate, you can vote early starting October 5th. And voting centers will be open beginning October 24th if you want to take your ballot and drop them off. The last day to register to vote in California is the 19th. And then going back to the work that we do and the services we provide, obviously we need your help and assistance, and want to again mention our virtual gala taking place on October 24th. The crosses you see behind me are actually auction items that we will have available. And you can register for free at irc2020.givesmart.com. You do need to register if you want to attend, but there's no fee or no charge. And these crosses were made available by a local artist, Debbie Fuentes. We do plan on doing more of these live stream events with different topics, so stay tuned for that. I do also want to mention again that the recording of today's time will be made available later tonight on our website or over the weekend. And then also we've been able to put together what we call FAQ sheets, or frequently asked questions, around national, state, and county, that will be made available actually at 2 o'clock on our website in English, and then later in Spanish, where they will be made available in Spanish as well. So stay tuned for that. It does not appear there's any questions, so we're not going to necessarily hold on to see if there's any questions. Again, thank you for attending. Jonathan, I want to thank you for the work that you've done, and your team. Rosa and Bree, who's working in the legal office right now, talking with clients, taking phone calls, filling out paperwork. And again, on behalf of the Immigration Resource Center and our board, we thank you for attending, and look hopefully to see you be supportive of the work that we do. Thank you.
Thank you.